The first question that comes to us is it possible to live constantly in this realization of God consciousness? And the answer is yes. It not only is possible, but ultimately it is an absolute necessity. And it is not difficult to achieve for the person who is intent on achieving it. It does require a little practice, a little discipline for a few months. In this wise, the earliest possible moment after awaking, there must be a relaxing and perhaps a reminder that God is individual consciousness, the consciousness of individual being. That makes us all one in Christ Jesus, in truth, in spiritual being. And of course, that one mind, that one soul, that one consciousness, knowing our need before we do, supplies it. It is its good pleasure to give us the kingdom. And then, with just a little patience, there will come that moment of quiet, of peace, of calm, of release from the world. And then we go about our daily business. But there must be an occasion, not later than noontime, for a renewal of this. And the mesmerism of the world, the fact that the presses, the wires, the radios, the televisions, the whole air and atmosphere is filled with this universal fear, universal doubt, universal atheism, does impinge itself upon us if we are not careful. And for that, we need renewals. In Scripture, we learn that the Master went away for periods of 40 days. And when he came down, he healed the multitudes. Yes, when he came down, he healed the multitudes. When he had filled himself full of the realization of God as his only capacity, then God, as his individual being, could bring about these healing works. We not only require an occasional 40 days, but we require many 40 hours, 4 hours, 40 minutes, 4 minutes, many periods of renewal. And so, certainly about dinner time, this should be renewed again, and at bedtime, and as many of you already know, on waking at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. We awaken for that specific purpose, and yet we don't do it. We are awakened by that which knows our need, and our need always is for refreshment, for renewal, for opening of consciousness to this divine inflow. Now, as we make a conscious practice of that, the weeks and the months slip around, and the first thing you know, you find strange things happening in your experience. You find people and you find things flowing to you that you never had taken thought for, that you had never consciously believed possible. You see virtually miracles happening every day of your life. How did this one know that I needed this? How did this come just at the moment when it was necessary? How did this contact come about? All of these hows and wheres and what. It becomes really and truly watching a life of miracle unfold. There again comes a period of danger. We are apt to get so fascinated with these persons and things and demonstrations as they come that we forget the source. And therein lies the danger. It is not the thing that is of importance. It is the principle of the thing that is important. Like the Master feeding the multitude. Feeding them how many times? Probably 3 in his 3-year ministry. Why only 3? Why not 33? If he had the capacity to do it once, he had the capacity to do it 100 times. Why only 3? He was revealing a principle. His interest wasn't in feeding hungry people. His purpose, his mission, was to reveal the principle of it. And in performing it 3 times for them, I'm sure he felt that if they were ever to learn it, they would learn it then. And so, in our metaphysical work, we hear far too many demonstrations of healing and of supply, and too few explanations of the principle that brought it about. We get fascinated with the demonstration. We get fascinated with the supply that comes in, or the new ideas that come, or the new harmonies that come into our experience, and we forget that they are only the added thing. And if we get meshed up again in those forms and effects, we will lose the principle. And so there must be a constant renewal until the harmonies of life begin to flow as of their own accord, as if you had nothing to do with it. There was He within me that is greater than he that is in the world doing it. The Father within me is doing it. I can do all things through Christ. I live, yet not I. Christ is doing this thing through me, or as my very being. And then learning to appreciate the loaves and fishes, the demonstrations, and to use them and to share them, but not to become fascinated with them. Live only in the awareness of the principle, and these things, these bounties, will fulfill themselves day by day, and we will just use them, pass them on, share them, and enjoy them. But not be concerned with laying up where moth and rust doth corrupt. Now, on that subject, this is an important point to remember. In the atmosphere of this room, you will not be fooled. But in the activity of everyday life, and more especially in the reading of some metaphysical literature, you are apt to forget the entire revelation of spiritual truth. Let me repeat again that since God is not only the creative principle, causative principle, but the substance and activity of the universe, this is a spiritual universe. And it is perfect, it is immortal, complete, harmonious, God-governed, spiritually governed, protected, maintained, sustained. Every individual on the face of the globe is God itself in manifestation, in expression, in individualization. God itself, the one life, the one mind, the one soul, the one substance, the one law, the one activity, appearing on earth as man. And we can all accept that sitting here in this room and in this atmosphere. It is only when we go out on the street tomorrow and mix in the business world and find the appearance of sin, disease, death, lack, limitation, that we are apt to turn to our metaphysical thought and say, oh, this is an illusion. Oh, this is unreal. Let's disregard it. Let's forget it. Let's pay no attention to it. Therein lies trouble. God and God's creation is not unreal and is not an illusion. The manner in which we behold God's creation constitutes the illusion, and so the illusion is never out there. There is no illusion out there to be wrecked. Almost everyone in the metaphysical world who has been touched by Oriental teaching has, I say almost everyone, has been wrecked on that very point of Maya or illusion. Because in 99% of all Oriental teachings, this world is an illusion. And this world is not an illusion. This is the world that God made and found to be very good. The illusion is our concept of this world. And our concept is not out here to be got rid of, to be destroyed, to be overcome. Our concept is always an image in thought, a belief in thought. And therefore, to make the remark or to accept the belief that our body is an illusion is to become a party to suicide. To accept the belief that this world is an illusion is, at least in belief, to separate ourselves from the good things of this world. Please remember this. I am not an illusion. I am God. Please remember that I is just as much God when it is appearing as individual you and me, or individual he, she, or it. It is still the one life, the one mind, the one soul. But if I look out here and see sickness, sin, disease, lack, and limitation, I am certainly seeing an illusion, but the illusion isn't out there. Out there is God expressed. The illusion's up here in my misperception. Where is the water on the road in the desert? Out there on the road? Oh, no. That illusion is not a physical thing. It is a mental mirage, isn't it? Sure. That water has no existence out there on the road. Out there on the road is the normal, natural creation of God, or creation of nature, creation of the road. Out there is sun, air, sand, cement. That's not illusion. The water on the road is the illusion, but there isn't any water on the road. And so the illusion exists up here in our misperception of what's out there. And so where do you think the disease is? In a person's body, in a person's mind, in a person's thought, in a person's being? Why, the disease exists as an illusion in mortal thought, in mortal belief, never externalized. Please remember those two words, never externalized. There is no such thing as an externalized mortal man, or an externalized mortal disease, or an externalized poverty. Those are beliefs that exist only as an illusion, as an illusory belief, as a suggestion in mortal thought, and they are not corrected out here in your patient. They're corrected in the practitioner's thought, consciousness, awareness. That is why when the people went to Jesus, they were healed. He didn't say to them, read 12 pages of this book. He didn't tell them to go to church on Sunday to get a healing. He said, what did hinder you? What power is it apart from God? That was his answer. Now, in the same wise, when you go to a practitioner, the activity of truth in the practitioner's thought will bring about the healing. What is the activity of truth in the practitioner's thought? Why, this whole thing is illusion. Where? Out here? No, in mortal belief. I don't have to tell this patient to be better. They're already spiritual. I don't have to tell them to be healed. They're already healed. I don't have to tell them what to do to get healed. I must know that nowhere in heaven or on earth is there a mortal man or a mortal condition. Those things exist only in mortal belief, and I, one with God, being a majority, I do not accept the belief. And if the practitioner does not accept the belief, the patient is healed. There is a wonderful passage in one of Mrs. Eddy's writings on that very point. When the practitioner realizes the truth, the patient is free. Believe me, that is a law. That is a spiritual law. One with God is a majority. One with truth. But let the practitioner accept the belief that you have it and that there's a cause for it, but it's all illusion, and then it's the blind leading the blind. Then you're both under the same belief. But let the practitioner be one with truth in the realization that I do not accept appearances as having reality. I do not accept water on the road as having had a cause, physical cause or mental cause. I do not accept water on the road as having to be removed. I know that only that which God made is there, and that which God made is perfect, normal, harmonious. Come on, let's drive our car. And so, the practitioner, in the realization of God consciousness, cannot see a mortal, cannot see anyone requiring healing, saving, reforming, or improving. And the reason is this. If the practitioner is looking out through seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and smelling, it is the blind leading the blind, because they are compelled to judge by appearances. In judging by appearances, they come to the same conclusion that the patient came to: sickness, and a cause for sickness, and maybe a cure. No, let us have this straight. No one is a practitioner until they have attained enough of spiritual awareness to be able to discern through spiritual faculties. And through spiritual faculties, Peter can say, "Thou art the Christ." Now, flesh and blood will not give this verdict. Judging by appearances will not give this verdict. But shutting out the senses, turning within to the Father, the divine faculties, the spiritual faculties, spiritual consciousness, what do we hear? "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Who is? Whoever the individual may be that turns for help. Anyone who turns to spiritual means for help, of them it is revealed, "This is my beloved Son." As a matter of fact, those who do not turn are in their true being that same Christ. But not having awakened even to enough of their identity to realize the need of spiritual awakening, they will be like the prodigal. They will remain separate and apart from the Father's house and separated from the royal robe and jeweled ring, emblems of spiritual heirship. Now then, for one to make statements of truth like, "Oh, you are spiritual, you are perfect," or, "Oh, of course you know it's unreal, never happened." All of those things are without power in the healing ministry. Not only that, they're apt to make us worse off than we were before. This mouthing of metaphysical truth through the mind, through the mouth, through the lips, in words, is more dangerous than relying on good materia medica. When we turn for spiritual help, let us turn in a spiritual direction where someone of spiritual vision can behold us in our true identity and not merely throw quotations at us from metaphysical books or the Bible. Believe me, those quotations that are so often thrown at us are dangerous to the one who's throwing it and to us, because it leaves us without spiritual help or material help. God is spirit, and spirit can only be spiritually known, understood, and revealed. And so only Peter, in his enlightened state, can say, "Thou art the Christ." No one should be a practitioner until some measure of that spiritual touch has been given to them, that they no longer look at human beings and judge them, condemn them, criticize them, until they have risen above that place where the sins of humanity annoy them, frighten them, or the ills of humanity disturb them. Until then, they should study, meditate, ponder, wait for the divine Spirit to touch them. Then, when they go forth into this world, they can go among lions, they can go with the lion and the adder, and be not harmed, and even render them harmless. Then only can the lion and the lamb lie down together, when there is an innocency, not a human one, a spiritual one. When the individual in their own being looks out and beholds only God as the soul, the spirit of individual being. Oh, of course, sinners come, saints come, sick people come. What difference does it make what they are or seem to be in their humanhood? Even the saint needs healing of saintliness. Even the harlots will get to heaven before John the Baptist. Even the saints need healing of their saintliness. Why? There is no such thing as personal goodness. There is no such thing as personal wisdom. There is no such thing as personal qualities of good. All good is God. God is all good, and God is the only good. Why callest thou me good, or spiritual, or wise? It isn't true. God is spirit, God is wisdom, and God expresses its wisdom as our individual capacity, and that is why our individual capacity is infinite, only because it's God capacity. Let us not forget this. When beholding error in any form, do not think of it as an illusion out there. Do not think of it as something to be removed, healed, or corrected, or reformed out there. Remember, the only place for all this correction is in the mind of the practitioner. And when the practitioner, through spiritual discernment, can say, "Thou art the Christ. Thou art the Son of the Most High," whether he's talking to the woman taken in adultery, or whether he's talking to the man tied up with arthritis, or the beggar on the street, or the alcoholic, only when the practitioner can say, "Thou art the Christ, the beloved of God," then can healing appear, but not because of this affirmation, not because of this quotation, but because of an inner vision that enables the individual actually to see and behold the good at the center of this individual's being. Do you see why I say God cannot be known through words or thoughts, God must be experienced. And when you experience God, you understand God as individual being, and then you'll understand why, if you say that you love God whom you have not seen, but do not love your fellow man whom you have seen, you are a liar. Why? Is there a God aside from man? No. No. The only God there is the God that appears to us as individual you and me. And when we behold anything else, that is the illusion, but the illusion isn't out there. The illusion is in our false sense of what is out there. Is that clear? Now, when a healing takes place, you will realize that while it appears again to our human sense as an improved body or an improved health or an improved pocketbook, actually that also is not there. That is merely our interpretation of what is there. What really is there is God made manifest, and we are beholding more of that godliness, only we are beholding it again in the language we understand. It may be French or English, it may be improved health or improved wealth, but it isn't those things. It is the activity and presence of God that we're beholding. So every healing that you witness is really more of God that you are beholding, and therefore it means that your spiritual capacities have been enlarged. That is why we have experiences such as one that I had recently of a lady who had been very, very ill for a good many years and who knew herself to be an atheist. But her friend told her that Mr. Goldsmith could give her help. Oh, she doubted that very much. But this particular day she was in such pain, and this had been going on, remember, for close to 30 years, that, well, she decided to ask Mr. Goldsmith, do you think you can help me? And Mr. Goldsmith said, probably so, if you want it. Well, yes, I do. And the next afternoon, the friend called up the lady and had a conversation with her in which the lady mentioned nothing about her health until she was asked. Oh, she said, that's a strange thing. You know, during the night, this entire condition left me, and there isn't a trace of it. I was trying to figure it out, and I realized, you know, this is nearly 30 years. It was just time for it to go. I think the lady was an atheist. It takes vision. It takes vision to behold the Christ, spiritual vision, and it takes spiritual vision to ask for a spiritual healing or healing through spiritual means, but it also takes spiritual vision to recognize when you have been healed by spiritual means. Oh, you think it's funny perhaps? I don't anymore. The amount of people who have beautiful healings and then agree that, you know, it's a strange thing how that happened. It was time for it to happen. Or, I wonder what did it. There's an answer to all that. And the answer is that flesh and blood did not reveal to Peter that Jesus was the Christ. It was spiritual vision. And it will be spiritual vision on your part when you select a practitioner, not because you've been recommended to him, not because somebody says he does miracle healing, but because something within you says, this is the practitioner to whom I should go. Or when you select your teacher, not because he's advertised, not because somebody says you ought to go to his class or miracles, but when something within your own being says, this will be my teacher, then you have a measure of spiritual vision. Then when you are healed, you have to recognize that it is a spiritual healing, and that means this, not merely that a fever was reduced or a lump removed. No. You will recognize that what happened was a degree of spiritual enlightenment in you that appeared outwardly as a greater sense of harmony. Now that's the secret of spiritual healing. A spiritual vision inwardly appears as health and harmony outwardly. At first, It is the spiritual vision of the practitioner or teacher that appears as the health and harmony of the patient, although it is true that the healing will usually not take place unless there is some measure of spiritual receptivity in the so-called patient. But even if it does, as in the case of our friend, it was purely the vision of the practitioner and without any help from the patient. But whether those healings are held or not, only time will tell. Jesus says after the healing, go and sin no more. Don't go back to that same state of consciousness, because the worst thing may come upon you. But remember, when you rightly recognize the nature of a spiritual healing, you will not give a testimony that I had a cold and got a treatment and was healed. You will not give a testimony that I was ill and had a treatment and got well. Your testimony will be, I had a realization of the Christ, and there was no more illusion. Now that is the secret of spiritual healing. Don't look for results in the physical body. Look for an activity of the Christ in your consciousness, and then when you look at your body, it will be all right, or your business, or your pocketbook. And that brings us to a point that should be touched on here. There's only one legitimate demonstration on the path of the infinite way, and that is the demonstration of God's presence. There is no other legitimate demonstration. All so-called demonstrations of health, wealth, harmony are but the effects of the one demonstration. It is literally true that thy grace is my sufficiency. Now let's take the word sufficiency. Sufficiency of health, sufficiency of supply, sufficiency of opportunity, sufficiency of joy, sufficiency of peace, protection, safety. Yes. What is my safety, my security, my health, my supply, my opportunities? Thy grace. That's all. Thy grace appears as my sufficiency of health, harmony, wholeness, completeness. Therefore, I have only one demonstration to make. The demonstration of thy grace. Because that grace is my sufficiency in all things. In all things. Thy grace. Let us remember that one prayer, one realization is sufficient. The statement will do us no good, and reciting it 1,000 times will do us no good. But a realization of that truth, that our only need is thy grace, and the realization of the presence of that grace will appear as our sufficiency in all things. It's a tremendous thing to know that our only need is the realization of the invisible, and that realization of the invisible appears tangibly as the visible. And then to know that regardless of what form of discord, inharmony we behold with seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, is an illusion, but not an illusion out there, just an illusion. And not an illusion that has to have something done to it. The realization alone that it is illusion is a realization that it has no substance, no law, no cause, no activity, no form, no effect. Isn't that enough to know? That an illusion has no substance, no law, no cause, no being, and then no effect. And when you've known that truth, you have it all. For tonight, anyhow. Thank you. Aloha, students. This is Joel again in Hawaii. And now that you have heard the
first and second tapes of this Honolulu closed class, which becomes a part of the class and practitioner work, you can better understand what I meant when I said that the California work brought to a high level this higher concept of prayer, higher atmosphere of prayer, with which we have been working and toward which we have been working for the past 2 years. In this tape, you have seen higher concept of prayer and higher concept of treatment. And this next step that I would like you to see is that the more you understand, the more you comprehend of this phase of prayer and treatment, the higher state of consciousness you have attained. Now hear this very carefully. If you were not attaining a higher state of spiritual consciousness, this attitude of prayer and treatment would not be clear to you. You can almost measure your own growth, your own development toward Christ consciousness if what you are hearing in this California series and in the New Hawaiian series is clear to you, understandable, and if it is becoming more simple to live in this particular atmosphere of life, this consciousness of life, you are advancing spiritually, you are progressing toward that mind, toward the realization of that mind, which was also in Christ Jesus. That mind, the mind that was in Christ Jesus, is your mind. Of course, it is the mind of every individual in all of the universe, since there is no other mind. But it is only in the attainment of the realization of this mind or this state of mind that you can demonstrate and live the spiritual life of grace. The very young student of truth has a difficult time understanding that they are children of God, heirs of God, and that they have no need to or rather, they do not understand that they can relax their conscious thinking as to their supply and health, since their entire experience is bound up in the labor of human living, physical labor and mental labor, the struggle and the strife against contending forces, erroneous powers, and the difficulties of competition. All of a sudden to be told you are children of God, heirs of God, joint heirs with Christ in God, and you may relax. And let health come to you, and let opportunity come to you, and let supply come to you. That is difficult. And you and I, at one time, were in that very stage, the stage of believing it too good to be true. Then came the stage when, through affirmations and denials, reading of many books, attendance at churches, lectures, services, classes, with a great deal of effort, with a great deal of mental strife and struggle, we began to achieve a freer sense of being, a freer sense of existence. That was a sign of our spiritual development. Now, if this California series and the new Hawaiian series seems perfectly logical to you, then you may know that you have attained a very high state of spiritual development. You have gone beyond metaphysics into an actual living of the spiritual life. In other words, you have been touched by the finger of the Christ. From here on, it will be easy, a very easy matter, for you to realize that without taking anxious thought, without concern, without any struggle or strife, that you may very soon attain the consciousness which is being unfolded to you. I think at this point that I can tell you the direction in which we are going. And I think you will grasp it. It isn't that you haven't heard this from me before or read it in the works. But I know much more than you can realize that what I'm about to tell you, even if you remember reading it or hearing it, was nothing but an idea in mind, probably a vague hope. Here is the direction in which we are going. The real truth is this: there are no laws or powers of error. There are none to combat, none to fight, none with which to struggle. It is somewhat like swimming. If you can't swim, or if you're a poor swimmer, then you know the struggle to keep afloat. You know the struggle to get from where you are to that point 100 yards away from where you are. But if you are a swimmer, this must make you smile. For you already know that there is no struggle to stay afloat. That is the function of the water, to hold you up. There is no effort to swim 100 yards. It is the most normal, natural thing in the world to glide right through the water without fight, without struggle. Ordinarily speaking, I mean, where there are no wild storms. You would be surprised how simple a matter it is to get through the water, and even where there are storms, and even where the distance is long, to do it without any exertion, since it is possible to rest continuously while swimming. Now, every swimmer knows that this is true. You not only swim, but you rest while you are swimming. Why? Because with every stroke, the body glides through the water of its own accord, that is, on the impetus of the stroke, without any further effort. And by the time the next stroke is required, you have been rested from the last one. It is really as simple as all that. Well, so it is in this higher atmosphere of the Spirit. There is no effort involved. The Spirit itself upholds us. The Spirit itself rests us. The Spirit itself maintains and sustains us. Without our praying, without our treatment, without our mental work, just of its own accord, by the virtue of grace, it supports us, It upholds us. It maintains us unto eternity, not just for 80 years and 10, but unto eternity. There is no end to our capacity to live if we have learned to be supported by the Spirit, to live on the Spirit, in the Spirit, and through the Spirit. And the reason it is so simple is that the Spirit has nothing to contend with. There are no laws of disease. There are no laws of limitation, no laws of lack. There is only one law, and that is the infinite law of God, good. No law of disease. The only law is immortality, eternality, resurrection, ascension. These are the only laws in spirit. And now you, if you really catch a glimpse of what is in the California series and the New Hawaiian series, you are already entering that state of consciousness in which you will not have to use mental powers. You will not have to use a mental power of good to overcome a mental power of evil, or a physical one. You will not have to use powers at all. The powers will uphold you with no effort on your part. This will help you understand why I write in my letters to you, relax, rest. Relax, rest. Relax in the Spirit. Rest in the Spirit. There's only one power. There's a power to uphold you, but there is no power to push you down. Just as in the water. Any swimmer will tell you that there is no power in the water to push you to the bottom. On the contrary, once you understand the principle of the water, it is virtually impossible to sink. The water will not let you get down very far. It not only holds you up, but if you start to go down, it pushes you up. The water has a buoyancy of its own, and the power of gravity does not operate there, nor does it in spirit. In spirit you have only one power, the upholding, sustaining power of grace. You see, in the higher atmosphere of treatment, you find treatment to be much more simple than in the earlier stages, and in the higher atmosphere of prayer, where you virtually relax all taking thought, you find it such a beautiful thing to commune with the inner spirit. And through this, you prepare yourself for the ultimate experience, which to some few of you has already come, and to most of you who are our earnest students will soon come. That is, the actual God contact, the actual God realization, the actual living in and of the soul. You have been brought to this higher level of treatment and prayer through all of the earlier stages, those stages that are defined in the writings and in earlier classwork. And through the writings and all of the earlier classwork, the consciousness of the teacher, the consciousness of the Father, has been sustaining you and leading you and drawing you to this point of individual revelation. In reviewing our tapes and my writings, I find nothing that should be omitted. I find that with every step of the letter of truth, you have likewise been given a spirit or the spirit of truth, the consciousness of truth, to support your forward steps. And that will ever be. Regardless of how high we go in unfoldment, there will be whatever of the letter of truth is necessary and the accompanying lift of the spirit of truth. Only, I expect that with each successive year, your individual foldment will carry you higher and higher until you touch the very tip of heaven itself, which is within you, and which more and more each day you are realizing. And so, from our beautiful Hawaii, aloha, this is Joel.